This is an extra Bible story that I would like to share with you all. I believe it has a good message, and there is no work that is required with this story. It's just something you can sit back and listen to. If you want to respond to the questions that I do ask towards the end, then feel free to do so. But this is not a required assignment that you need to complete. Now, this story is called Joseph the Dreamer, and the real story can be found in Genesis chapter 37, verses 39 through 41. Remember, the stories out of this book are a retelling for children. And it says, Jacob's large family lived in the land of Canaan, where his father Isaac had lived, and this is the story of his family. Jacob wanted to give something special to his favorite son Joseph. He made a beautiful coat with stripes of different colors. "Thank you, Father," Joseph said as he put the coat on. "I can't wait to show it to my brothers." That was the trouble with Joseph. He was always bragging and showing off, and his 10 older brothers couldn't stand him. Only the youngest, Benjamin, liked him. So when Joseph showed off his coat, his brothers only grumbled. Then Joseph made things even worse. A few days after Jacob gave him the coat, Joseph had a dream. In the dream, he and his older brothers were out in the field, tying long strands of wheat into bundles. His bundle stood up, then all the other bundles stood up around it and bowed to it. Naturally, Joseph wasted no time in telling his brothers about it. They laughed. "What do we care about a dream?" said Simeon. "We aren't bundles of wheat, and we will never bow down to you." But Joseph soon had another dream. This time he told his father. In the dream, the sun and moon and 11 stars were all bowing down to him. Even Jacob thought he had gone too far this time. "What's that supposed to mean?" he said. "Are your mother and I and your fathers all going to come and bow down in front of you?" Angry, he sent the boy away, but secretly he wondered if there really could be something to Joseph's visions. 20 pieces of silver. One morning, Jacob sent Joseph to check up on his brothers, who were out in a pasture tending sheep. Joseph put on his coat of many colors and set off. 2 hours later, the brothers saw him coming across the field. "Look, here comes the great dreamer," Dan said. The sight of Joseph in his fancy coat made the brothers' blood boil. "Here's a chance for us to get rid of that pest," Simeon said. "Let's kill him and bury him out here. We can tell our father that some wild animals did it." Most of the brothers agreed, but Reuben, the oldest, didn't want harm to come to Joseph. "We don't have to kill him," he said. "Let's throw him in this pit and let him die." Secretly, Reuben was planning to go back later and rescue Joseph. When Joseph got near, the brothers grabbed him and tore off his coat. "Stop!" Joseph cried. "What are you doing?" His brothers lifted him up and threw him in the pit. The pit was deep, and Joseph could not climb out. "What good are your dreams now?" Simeon said, and the brothers sat down to eat. Soon, some traders came by on their way to Egypt, their camels loaded with spices and perfumes to sell. By this time, the brothers had cooled down a little. Judah said, "I have an idea. Instead of killing Joseph, why don't we sell him as a slave to the traders? After all, he is our brother." They all thought this was a good plan, and they sold Joseph to the merchants for 20 pieces of silver. "What are we going to tell our father?" Dan asked. The brothers talked it over for a while. Then they killed a goat and dipped Joseph's coat in the blood. They took the coat to Jacob. "We found this out in the field," Judah told him, forcing tears from his eyes. Jacob knew right away it was Joseph's coat. He fell to his knees and pulled at his hair, crying, "Oh, my poor son, eaten by wild animals! I will never see him again." The brothers never said a word. None of them knew that God had something special in mind for Joseph. Joseph in prison. Far away in Egypt, Joseph was alive and well. The traders had sold him to a rich man named Potiphar, who worked at the palace of the Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt. Potiphar took a liking to Joseph. He could tell that Joseph was smart and able to handle important work, so he put Joseph in charge of his house and all his property. Everything was going well until the wife of Potiphar noticed how handsome and strong Joseph was. She began to flirt with him. Joseph tried to stay away from her. He didn't want to anger Potiphar, but the wife kept after him. Finally, he told her to stay far away from him. He turned to leave, but she grabbed his coat. A piece ripped off in her hand, and Joseph hurried away. The wife was angry that Joseph had rejected her. She went to her husband and showed him a piece of Joseph's coat. "That Joseph tried to attack me," she said, "but I got away. See, this is the piece of coat I tore off when I escaped." Potiphar believed the lie. He ordered the men to take Joseph to Pharaoh's prison and put him with the other prisoners. More dreams. In the prison, Joseph met a man who had once been Pharaoh's butler. The butler had done something that made Pharaoh angry, so Pharaoh had sent him to jail. One day, the man seemed upset. "What's wrong?" Joseph asked. "I had a strange dream last night," the man told him. "I wish I knew what it meant." "Tell me about the dream," Joseph said. "God knows what dreams meant, and he will help me give you the answer." The butler told Joseph his dream. "I saw a vine with 3 branches. Grapes grew on the vine. I held Pharaoh's cup under the grapes and squeezed them. Then I gave the cup to Pharaoh." "This is a good dream," Joseph said. "It means that in 3 days Pharaoh will pardon you. You will once again be his butler." This made the butler very happy. 3 days later, the guards came to take the butler back to the palace. Within a week, the butler had forgotten all about Joseph. For 2 more years, Joseph remained in prison. But then something happened that even he would never have expected. Pharaoh himself had a dream. He was standing beside the Nile River. Suddenly, 7 fat, healthy cows came up from the river and started eating the grass along the bank. Then 7 ugly, skinny cows came up out of the river and ate the fat, healthy cows. What could the dream mean? Pharaoh asked his wise men, but none of them knew the answer. Then the butler remembered Joseph. "Tell my guards to bring this man to me," Pharaoh said. In a short time, Joseph stood before Pharaoh, and Pharaoh told him the dream. Joseph replied, "O great king, this is what your dream means. The 7 fat cows stand for 7 years of good weather, where there will be plenty of grain. The 7 skinny cows stand for the 7 years of bad weather, so that the grain won't grow, and there will be a great famine. People will starve." Then he went on. "God has told me the meaning of this dream, so that you can save your people. In the years of plenty, you should set aside 1/5 of the wheat crop and store it away. Then, when the bad years come, there will be enough wheat to get by." Pharaoh liked the plan. Not only that, he liked Joseph. This is no ordinary slave, he thought. This is an exceptional man, someone I can trust. He put Joseph in charge of the palace. Joseph did such a good job that Pharaoh gave him a promotion. He made Joseph governor of the land. He gave him a chariot of his own, so he could check up on all the various parts of the country. Now he was the second most powerful man in all of Egypt. But he hadn't forgotten his family back in Canaan. Was his father still alive? And his brothers? Were they sorry for what they had done to him? It would not be long before he found out. So there's a little think about it question here. The story does continue on. Joseph ends up actually saving his brothers. He does first act out of anger towards them when they come to get grain during the famine, but he does end up saving his brothers, and they kind of reunite, and his whole entire family comes to Egypt to live with him. So think about it. Joseph had to go through some terrible times. What do you think gives people the strength to survive hard times in their lives? Now remember, this is not a required assignment. It's just something to kind of think about. So if you want to leave your comments below, please feel free to do so.